Hey, welcome everyone. How are you? Hi, how are you? This is Rollo Tomassi. Can't get over Pat, man. Can't get over Pat. He doesn't go away easy. I'll tell you that. Welcome to another edition of the Rational Male. This is going to be another Q&A, but we also are going to do a topic. I think I'm going to start doing a regular series here. For a while, I was just doing Q&As like once a month. I think now pretty much everybody presumes I'm just doing a Q&A because everybody just throws out their questions anyways and attaches $5 to it and expects it to get answered. So I'm okay. I'm going to go with it. So feel free. A couple of things before we get started here. I'm coming in a little bit hot. I'll explain to you why here in just a second. But by hot, I mean like I've been dealing with some BS today on Twitter and some other not real life stuff, but like online stuff. And I think that I am rapidly learning how to separate my online, I guess, consciousness from my outside. I have to now. I'm getting to the point where it's like I will never get anything done if I don't separate my online consciousness from my real life in this room, dealing with my wife, dealing with my kid, dealing with my in-laws, dealing with everybody. That life. I've said this before. I don't know if you guys actually caught this, but it'll most definitely be in book 4 in case you haven't. But I'll let you know, G, here in just a second. Pat, I'll tell you why Pat's not with me right now. But I've said this. I said that this is my belief, my theory, that we have 3 different consciousnesses. Consciousness is. One of them is what I'm doing right here with you, which is talking directly to you and interacting. It's that in-person consciousness where we're just, when they always say, you should like think before you speak kind of thing. That's really hard to do in your in real life consciousness. And then there is the consciousness where you're just sort of like in your own head and you have that internal dialogue. And this is like the consciousness I use when I am writing, whenever I'm working on a book or I'm working on a blog post or whatever, or writing an email maybe. It's sort of just like, what do you want to say and how do you want to convey it? Sometimes I think that the internal dialogue, the internal consciousness is almost like, I think you know yourself a little bit better in your internal consciousness. And then there's our online consciousness, which has just recently developed, I think, in the last, I don't know, maybe 20 years, like since the internet, since everybody decided that they're going to live their lives behind a screen. And that's how we're going to socialize and learn how to relate with one another. And we're going to see, I think, starting with this next generation, we have the first generation that has had to learn and to understand socialization and a culturalization, like these big $10 words today, online and from behind a screen. I usually call this like sort of the digital buffer. If you've read the first book, that was if I was to go back and change any part of the first book, it would probably be the buffers part, because I can add probably about 12 more to that particular section. If you've read buffers, you know what I'm talking about. But buffers, I think right now have become a little bit more intense. But so anyways, I'm coming in hot. Yeah, let's see. First question, why am I not? Why is Pat not on? I keep asking me these questions because I think we need to keep covering this. Pat had brain surgery. If you didn't know, he was in an accident and he had 3. Turns out that he had a brain bleed, and then they did the scanning of him and found out that he had 3 tumors that were causing that bleed. He had some seizures. If you go and you look at Pat Campbell's website, or his radio station's website, he's got a dedicated page there. You can go look that up. If you know how to find him on Twitter, you can find that page. And there is actually, he's got 2 different radio shows where he describes what happened. But in brief, he was driving on a Sunday. He was actually supposed to show up on this show, and it really kind of concerned me. I was like really worried because he's the one that's usually kicking me in the ass to be on time. And we usually try to talk like about an hour, maybe half an hour before our shows on Sundays. And so he didn't show up, and he didn't show up for the whole show. And then later that evening, I get the first text I've ever gotten from his wife. And she says, Pat's in the ICU in the Tulsa hospital. And I was really kind of freaked out, honestly. So it turns out everything was okay. He is still the same Pat. He didn't have a stroke, or he didn't stroke out or anything like that. But during the course of that situation, they found out that he had 3 tumors. They had to take him into surgery, and removed him successfully. He's back on the radio right now, but he did have brain surgery, and he is very exhausted. And so he can only apply himself to so many things right now. And so we just said, hey, we'll come back to it. So I am not on his show. He's not on my show right now. For the time being, for the foreseeable future. These are his words. So nothing personal. I mean, we still talk. We're actually very good friends. We have been for about 2.5 years now. So that is the situation, G, that's happening. No, this is not a Jackson. This is an Ibanez destroyer base. Thank you. And no, it's it's funny is I bought this thing from Sweetwater. It's a really great base. I have 2 bases actually. I've got one upstairs and one downstairs in the music room, and they're both Ibanez's. The one that my main one that I have used since I was a teenager is an Ibanez Silver Series jazz bass, and it was from like 1976, 77. It's the same kind of bass that Bootsy Collins played, and what's his name from Earth, Wind, and Fire? I can't remember his name. I love the sound of that, and I love the sound of this. And this one looks cool. And this one's more new. I bought this about 1.5 years ago. So when can you see me jam? Is that what you want? You really want to see me jam? Should I do it? Sorry guys, I'm warming up. And the reason I'm kind of hot here is because I had and what was it? Blah 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 blah. Let me see real quickly here. So anyways, I just had to deal with this woman online talking about how just basically repeating the blank slate mythology that I talk about quite a bit. Chris Von Erich sent me this link, or this tweet of this. Of course, she's very social justice-y, warrior-y, LGBTQE, whatever, talking about how you're basically repeating the lie of the blank slate, which is an easily refutable lie at this point. And I don't know maybe it's just me, but like when I hear stuff like that, I have to say something. I have to I don't know, maybe it's just, I don't know, sense of justice, right? So I snarkily linked her a study that basically proves that gender differences begin genetically in the womb. Our brains are a little boy brain and a little girl brain. They change differently, or they develop differently in the womb, and those natural proclivities come out later on, and we can prove how those things happen. So again, old order thinking versus new order thinking. And so when that comes out, it's like, I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind. It's really hard when people have ego investments in their belief sets. Another thing I'm talking about in book 4. Why should we avoid LTRs in our 20s? Well, I think the reason for that is because for men in particular, I don't think necessarily women should avoid LTRs in their 20s. I think they would probably do better to look for long-term relationships with older men, because men and women are different. So for men, the reason I say that is because I believe that you don't know enough. You need to get experience. You need to gain experience from spinning plates, from being non-exclusive, from experiencing, let's just say, more than one woman in your life. Okay, so that's why I say that. There you go. There's your $3 answer. So anyways, today we're going to talk about paternity. And I have to sort of, you got me solo today, so you're going to have to just put up with me. I think most people want me solo anyways. I like having Ryan on. I like having Rich on. We're going to have, but before we move on, I have to say this now, forgive me. I know I usually take about 10 minutes before I like launch into a topic, but I have to do this first. If you are, if you're a fan of Rule Zero, which is our Saturday show with myself and Rich Cooper, Ryan Stone. Obviously, if you watch this show, if you're subscribing to the show, you probably already understand who I'm talking about. John from Modern Life Dating, Troy Francis, and all of us have decided we're going to do an event. And I'm not going to, I announced this. I'm not, or the real launch actually starts on Saturday. And that's what I wanted to tell you guys is Rich Cooper will be hosting Rule Zero on Saturday. That will be at 11:30 Eastern AM, and we will be doing the official launch then. We're also going to be doing a straight up live call-in show on Saturday. So it's going to be a Q&A show, and then it's going to be kind of like the hard launch, I guess, of our new event, which we're calling Rule Zero Live. We'll give you all the details. If you want more details, I'm not going to, I could tell you right now, but it's easier if you just simply go to my Patreon page, which is in the description right here for the links if you want to go check that out. I think either it's the first one or it's the second story back right now. You can get the details that I can release right now, but we're going to be giving everybody the chance to get at it. Also, if you want an early chance, I am prioritizing my Patreon subscribers to first so they can get tickets. So if you're a Patreon subscriber of mine, I will prioritize you to the top of the list. I can tell you this right now. We are limiting the tickets to this event for just to 100 people. This is sort of our trial, our trial balloon here. We're trying to figure out, how to do this and how is this something we can do on the regular. Again, the reason we started doing this, and I'll explain this a little bit more detail on Saturday. People kept asking, after all the shit that went down in June, are you going to do any more live events? And I have decided that I'm not going to do any more live events until book 4 is done. So book 4 is nearing completion. And so now we're talking about maybe doing some live events. We've decided that we're going to do one, and it's going to be the middle of April. And so set your calendars right now, and you are definitely going to want to watch Rule Zero on Saturday on Rich Cooper's Entrepreneurs in Cars channel. So there's your heads up, and go check that out. Again, you want more info, go check out my Patreon. You'll see what I'm talking about. So there you have it today. Crispy and Philly, thank you once again for your $10 contribution, which you always give me. Thanks, man. You are the most loyal, most routinely, regularly giving person. I give and I give and I give. Oh, Sam's in the chat. Thanks, Sam. Hopefully we won't have the same degree of spam and shenanigans that were going on in the last one. So check that out. Any plans for doing Rule Zero live, plans for Europe? That is a definite possibility. I'll tell you right now that one of the biggest disappointments I had last year, and yeah, last year was a rough year for me, man. But the biggest disappointment I had was not being able to go to Poland. And I have a Polish translation of my book, and I really wanted to meet with guys and shake hands and sign books and everything else. That didn't work out. So if I do if we do a European one, I'm gonna, if you bought a ticket to the other convention last July in Poland and you had to get a refund, or you couldn't come see me, you can contact me once we decide what we're going to do in Europe. I'm not really sure where we're going to do it. It's a possibility we might do it in the Netherlands. So we'll see. Those are in the larval stage. Don't quote me on anything. One other thing I should say before we get started here as well is I got interviewed for a documentary. This was back in October of last year. Speaking of the Dutch, it was a Dutch documentary team. They were doing hopefully a complimentary documentary on the manosphere, on the red pill, on these men's communities and things like that. I know that they interviewed me. They interviewed Dr. Warren Farrell. So I'm going to be on the same, I don't know, guess documentary as Dr. Warren Farrell. That's coming out should be coming out in March. At least that's what they're telling me right now. So that's something to look forward to. I'll let you guys know as we get closer to the date. But they did a pretty extensive interview of me in that one, so that should be fun. I'll let you know when that comes up. So anyways, yeah, Jack Napier's in the Netherlands, yes, but that's not why I want to do it. It's because I really love Holland. I have worked with distilleries in Holland, particularly ones for gin, vodka, and Geneva. You guys know what that is? It's kind of like a gin. I don't know if they have Geneva here in the States. It's all over the place in Europe, but so anyways, yeah, I would love to get back to Holland. I mean, I'm familiar with Holland, that's why. So I know where I would go, like maybe do it in Amsterdam or something like that. It might be fun. So we'll see how it works out. Okay, so we're going to get started. Here we go. It is now 1:47. It's about 15 minutes. So we're going to talk about paternity today. CJ, thank you very much for that $20. I will get back to where you're at right now. Here's the rules, by the way, guys. If you have an off-topic super chat, I'm going to save all of those until the end of the show. Sam Bada is keeping track for me, so I will go back and check these things out later on, like for the last 20 minutes, half an hour of the show. So getting back to the topic today, we're going to talk about paternity. The reason I got into this topic today was a couple of reasons. First off, Rich Cooper has a really great video out right now called Paternity Fraud, and it was he was talking. Of course, he's doing one of his his in-car shows, his in-car studio, where he's driving around. He's talking about these things. He usually does about anywhere from an 8 to a 10-minute video, sometimes even less than that, to talk about certain topics. That was one thing I liked watching that, and I'm reminded of this a lot. The other reason I wanted to talk about paternity and the importance of paternity is because I did an interview on Monday with Suzanne Venker. And she's kind of, I would say she leans more tradcon. She wants to be a life coach, or she is a life coach. I'm doing these things because I'm sort of branching out. I think it's important that, sort of like the staples of the manosphere, the staples of the red pill community need to sort of branch out and talk to people outside of our circles, our spheres, so to speak. So, and she's very nice. It was a very good conversation. I think we only disagreed about a couple of things. And even those were mostly semantic and just sort of, disagreements in how to look at a particular problem, but not about the problem itself. So when that comes out, it's an audio interview. I was on for about an hour and 20 minutes, I think. So it's actually pretty tight. She'll probably pare it down because she has a professional producer that will probably pare it down to about an hour, maybe an hour and 10. So when that comes out, I'll let you guys know. It should be Sunday of this week. So at least that's what they told me. So I'll let you know. But during that conversation, we talked a little bit about paternity and the importance of paternity. I am far more evolutionarily grounded, I think, than she is, but still a really good conversation. I like her a lot. I would gladly have her on this show or go talk to her on her show at some point. But during that conversation, it sort of brought up some old topics about paternity. I've written, if you look in the description here, I've written at least 4 different posts about paternity over the last year and a half. The first one was called The War on Paternity. And this was kind of my first, I guess, foray into the importance of why paternity is sort of a thing. It was made a thing for men anyways. It's important for women as well, but we'll discuss why it is here in just a second. When Rich was talking about what Maury Povich taught you about paternity, the baby is not your, yeah, okay, that's actually, as odd as this is going to sound, why is that salacious, right? Why is it that a TV show could center on whether or not the child is that particular father's, or that woman is trying to perform what we call in the manosphere anyways, paternity fraud. We don't like to call it that. It's basically cuckoldry. So let's define it as really what it is. And we need to start talking about terms that are some people want to shy away from. But why is it that we can create a TV show like the Maury Povich show? Why can we have topics that are really kind of red meat topics center on a woman's infidelity or a man's infidelity as well? Because if you go and you look at, like, say, the Tyra Banks show, or you look at remember when Julian Blank got sort of his ass nailed to the wall and he decided he didn't want to be a PUA anymore, and now he's just some kind of like woo-woo magical motivational guy now. He didn't used to be that way, but there was a shift. There was a transition that guy made, very similar to what Roosh is kind of doing right now, where he renounces his old bad boy ways and he wants to become something different. I want to be a better person. Guess what, ladies? It's all true. You were right after all. I should not be the incorrigible bachelor that I actually am right now. And let me go on national TV and make about $30,000. So I can go there and be your whipping boy. But why is it that those topics, and I'm not, Donovan Sharp is a good friend of mine, but he makes a lot of, he snapped back to 50,000 subs in no time because of the topics that he does, which are very much red meat, clicky baity topics. And not saying that they're not important or great. And I love Donovan like a brother, but let's be honest here. It's that same Maury Povich kind of feel, that salaciousness, for lack of a better term, salaciousness. But okay, so here I have to ask why. Why is that a big deal? Why do people want to tune in to see if the baby is yours? Because we have innate proclivities that push us, compel us to want to know whether the baby is ours, or it's a big deal. And it's always been a big deal, even if it's like, what was it? Was it King Henry V, or I forget, King Henry VIII, who basically started his own religion because he wanted, I hope I got the right guy, I probably don't. The king decides that he wants to divorce Anne Boleyn, was it Bloody Mary, just so he can have a male heir, because that's important to the guy. He was ready to defy the Catholic Church. I'm probably butchering this. Defy the Catholic Church to start the Church of England, or his own church, so that he could divorce one woman to have the other one, because he was wanting to produce a male heir. Why is that? Why is that a big deal? Because paternity is a big deal. For men, paternity is a huge deal. And if you look again in the description here, I've written another essay that's called The Existential Fear of Men. And that's where we really kind of have to start today. Because when we talk about Maury Povich saying the baby's not yours, haha, and the guy dances around and he's happy that it's the baby's actually not his, that baby is somebody's. We don't know who it is, but why is it that a woman would try? I mean, we already know this, right? We know why a woman would try to deceive a man into thinking that one child is this man's rather than this man's. Because one man is a better provider, one guy has better prospects than the other guy does. So she wants the alpha seed. She has the baby with that guy and tries to pass off the baby as if it's the beta bucks guy, because that guy is a better bet for her future and better bet for the baby. So that is just pragmatism. So when we talk about hypergamy, and we're going to talk a little bit about it today, not the whole show, promise, but hypergamy is pragmatic, and it understands the strategy, the mating strategy, women's innate strategy takes into account men's innate strategy and what it is about that, like the trade-offs that men have to make in order to satisfy a woman's sexual strategy. So we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit, but that was one thing I wanted to I've been made aware of a couple of stories. One of them I'm going to read to you right now. But the other one, and you have to forgive me, I didn't have time to copy this thing, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I have a lot of readers in Africa, in like Nigeria and Kenya. And somebody sent me this story about a guy who was like 64 years old, and he wasn't, applying it to me directly. It was a guy who was 64 years old. He had 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. And I believe the girl was his actual biological child. But through a series of events, and I won't bore you with these events, he comes to find out at about 55, 56 years old that I think it was, but I know what it was. He was he'd won the genetic lottery or whatever it is, where you can get a visa, I guess. I don't know why they do this, but you can win a visa to go to the United States or go wherever. But in order to do that, you've got to do a DNA test. Well, of course, guess what happens when you do something like 23andMe, or you have to do a DNA test to find out certain genetic diseases, or maybe one of your kids catches some sort of disease, and you find out through genetic testing that the child is not actually yours after the child is 25 years old. So for the last 25 years, you've invested all yourself as a man, emotionally and financially, and just life-wise. You want to instill your values. I mean, let's just say if you are one of these guys. Now, remember, women, when they are breeding with one guy, they're having sex with that guy and breeding with one guy because that guy has the best. It was the funnest sex, and he was the best genetic potential. Whether she realizes this consciously or not is irrelevant at this point, but hypergamy does realize this. If we can think of hypergamy as sort of this drive, this innate prime directive, hypergamy knows that the best deal for it is to breed with the best genetic specimen that it can, and to have the best provisioning male take care of the progeny of that guy, if that guy happens to not be the best at providing as well. So what happens, of course, is it's in women's best life interests to have sex, to breed with a high value, high genetic stock. High value of genetic stock male. Have that child, and then some way convince her long-term partner. However that happens, and this is the important part. This is the very important distinction to make. Is that however that happens, because it happens in different ways, that's a form of cuckoldry. So today, when we talk about women keeping it secret, like the guy that I'm telling you about from Kenya right now, he finds out that 3 of his boys are not his, but the girl is his. And so he doesn't know how to process this. And he's at the point of where he's at 64 years old, wants to divorce his wife. I think they might have divorced at a point where he is trying to get her to he's just losing his shit, and to the point where he's ready to get violent with her, puts a gun to her head, makes her explain what had happened because she wasn't about to do that, and of course throws it all on him. Why did you go and look at this? Why did you the jig is up, right? And so she wants to maintain the life that she's had for a long time because the kids are now grown. And she wants to live happily ever after because she has optimized and completed her biological imperative, which is have sex and breed with a high value man, have his children, and have another guy have a guy who is the best provisioning male for the long term, for long-term security, for provisioning for herself and provisioning for her children. She's basically won the lottery, right? That's a jackpot. Because she's got a guy that's willing to, or doesn't. He maybe wouldn't be willing, but in this case, it's what I call retroactive. Well, actually, no. In her case, it would be proactive cuckoldry, in that she was already with this guy, and then he found out that she had sex with somebody who was the help or something like that. I'll see if I can dig that up and retweet that on my. Actually, if you look at my Twitter feed, it's already on there, but I'll retweet it so you guys know which story I'm talking about. That's not quite as important as the other one that I'm going to get to here in just a second, but this is a good example of this. This is proactive cuckoldry, meaning that the woman is already engaged, is already married, is already with her beta bucks guy. She's already with the provider, but in the back of her head, in her hind brain, women have to have this trade-off. They've got to find a guy. If they can't find the best genetic prospects in the same man as the best provisioning and security and protection prospects in the same guy, then she's got to find a way to resolve this. I talked about this on Rich's show about 2 weeks ago when I was debating hypergamy with Dr. Sean Smith. All right, so we were talking about the ins and outs. Now, after the fact, I guess, hypergamy after the fact. Now, this is hypergamy before the fact. So the before the fact is proactive cuckoldry. So it's what that is. It's secure the beta guy and then cheat on him, have another man's baby, and then pretend as if that child is his. Again, this is what Rich Cooper was talking about in his most recent video about paternity fraud. We also see right now, we'll discuss this also later. We also see that it is illegal in most countries for a healthcare provider or somebody doing these genetic testings, or if a healthcare provider discovers that the child that's supposed to be one man's is not actually that man's, it is illegal for them to tell that man, to say, hey, look, you have been paying and investing yourself in this child, and the kid ain't yours. It is illegal for that. And we'll discuss why that is, because it has everything to do with paternity and how paternity is used against men today, or their innate paternal drive. So that's proactive cuckoldry. It is the idea that she's going to secure the beta male, the provider male first, and then will look outside of the relationship to satisfy her hypergamous need to get with the alpha fuck side of things, right? The alpha seed. I should be nicer about that, right? The alpha seed side, because that's really what she's doing. She's looking for the best genetic specimen to reproduce with. Okay, so that's solving her reproductive problems. Men and women both have to find ways, mating strategies, to solve their reproductive problem. How am I going to have the best baby that I can possibly have? And how can I ensure that that baby will survive and have the best life possible and will be protected and will have, 3 square meals a day, that kind of crap. Okay. So that's the trade-off right there. So that's women's mating strategy in a nutshell. So that's proactive. Retroactive is like this. Retroactive is when that woman is in her party years and she breeds with 1, possibly 2 guys, has 1, possibly 2 children, maybe even 3, depending on when you meet her. But this is when a woman is in her party years, or maybe a little bit after that, has those kids, whether it's carelessness or it's her direct strategy or her plan to do these things. A lot of women will have sex with an alpha when they're, because they're having fun. You're not thinking, like, it's not that women, let me clarify this. It's not that women, when they're in their party years, are thinking, oh, here's a great alpha male guy I met at in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break. I want to reproduce with him. They're not thinking that. Men don't, same thing. Men, you see a hot chick at the club, you're not going, wonder if we'd have beautiful babies. We're not thinking that. We're thinking, I want to tap that. And they're thinking the same thing. Man, he's hot. I want to get with him. Right. So that impulse is a reproductive impulse. And whether or not we're making a conscious decision to go and reproduce with that person is irrelevant at this point, because that's the reason why you're going to reproduce with them, is because you think the person is hot. And this is, I get this all the fucking time. I heard it today, as a matter of fact. I read it today. Again, I'm coming in hot on Twitter. And somebody was, I forget, some white knight, Christianese cuck, for lack of a better term, decides that he wants to virtue signal to all of Twitter and say that, he thinks lust is overrated. No, ladies, I'm not about lust. I'm about the long haul, and I would make a great long-term provider, and I'm such a good guy. I also saw, and I retweeted this today too. There's a guy who's he's got his own blog. He's 47 years old. He's trying to find a wife or a girlfriend or something like that, and he is willing to pay someone $25,000 to find him a girlfriend. And I tweeted back to the guy. I don't know the guy's name. Again, if you want to go check my Twitter feed, you can go see it. But I tweeted back to this guy. I said, dude, how about I get you a girlfriend for $13? And so I gave him a link to the Rational Male and say, read this and understand why any girl that you're going to get with using this lame ass ploy is going to be doomed to failure, because you're still thinking in your old order thinking, and you're still thinking in your blue pill conditioned mind. And whether or not that he's going to take me up on it, I don't know. Same thing with Justin Bieber right now. Is like, well, every damn picture I'm looking at, people keep saying, you need to help out Justin Bieber. I don't need to help out jack shit. Certainly not Justin Bieber. But he's not going to listen to me anyways, man. He's just simply not going to listen to me. What is this? Clary Lawrence. Thoughts on correlation between increased suicide rate between men and women due to being zeroed out, and the effect it has on young men and the son's disease. Glenn, I'll answer that at the end of the show. I promise. I've got you. I've already got it. Sam is keeping all my logs for me, so I'm gonna move on here. And YOLO, I saw your post as well. There it is. What do you say? 2020 managed immediately. Yeah. Well, okay. So Red Steel, you're on point here. Yes, in 2020, a man should immediately test his kids. I think that it ought to be a legal. This is a good starting point here too. I think it ought to be illegal not to do this, to test to see if the child is the actual child of that, because what would happen, and okay, so this isn't the case right now, right? In 2020, a man should immediately test his kid. Yeah. Why is that not something that they do at birth? Why not? We've been able to, we've plotted the human genome since the early 2000s. Why is it that we can't have an accurate DNA test of your own child when it comes out, to say, hey, you're on the hook? If we're going to make a man liable, I mean, whether he wants to be or not, it doesn't matter to me, but whether that guy wants to be a cuck or he doesn't want to be a cuck, we make that man liable. Whoever, you know what? I'm going to go dig that up real quick. I've got a really good, where did I put this? I've got a great post, and it's called Children of Men. And you guys need to, there it is. Gosh, I'm going to put Children of Men in the yes, I know it was a movie. That's where I stole the line from. Thank you very much. There is this information. Oh, this sort of relates to it. Okay, so this was I wrote this post called Children of Men, and it was about DNA testing. Right, that's about paternity fraud, essentially. So this is legal advice. It's called family-law.freeadvice.com. That's where I pulled this from. Okay, so what I'm going to read to you is from that site. It says, children born during a marriage. The husband is presumed to be the father of a child born during or after his marriage to the mother. In some states, there is an irrefutable presumption of paternity. Let that sink in for a moment, okay? Why is it that we don't test right now? We could have been doing this for a while, okay? This means that if a child is born during the marriage, you will be deemed the father, even if a DNA test later says otherwise. Why is that? Why is that the norm? Why is that the state that we're in right now? Other states do, and this is the United States, other states do allow you to rebut or challenge paternity if you comply within strict time limits to challenge paternity. So if a guy isn't suspicious, if a guy is not, if a guy is just in a great relate, like the guy I was describing here in Kenya, because this is Kenya, not the United States, but if a guy believes and wants to believe that the child is his, that time frame, he's never going to ask those questions until it's time to get a DNA test for, to find out if there's some sort of genetic, like if he's got some sort of disease or something like that, and they need to find out if the kid has it, and suddenly realize it's not actually his kid. Well, he's not going to ask. That time's up, man. You're on the hook. It's in the child's best interest, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. So within a certain time limit. Okay. If you consent to your divorce being finalized without consenting paternity, you will forever be deemed that father. Okay. So if you were to, like, say later get divorced, that kid, even if it's not your flesh and blood, it's not sharing your genetics, you're still on the hook to provide for that child. That's the important part right there. This presumption cannot be rebutted, even if you didn't have reason to believe the child was not yours. Once a judgment or order decrees that you are the father of a child, challenging the judgment with an appeal or motion, even on grounds like fraud, is very time sensitive and difficult. Okay. Children. Okay. So this is children born during a marriage. So what did we just talk about a minute ago? We said proactive cuckoldry is when you're already in the marriage, the woman cheats on you, the child's not yours, and the child is born, but you believe that the child is yours. So that's the first part. This is the second part. Okay. This is the retroactive cuckoldry. Children born before the marriage. So she's already had these kids, and you come along because you're a beta in waiting and you think it's a great idea to date single moms and to take on the responsibilities and the liabilities of the parental investment of other men. You think that's cool. You think you're a hero for doing that, and you're going to get pussy because of that. This is the section for you. Okay. Children born before marriage. Some states impose a presumption of paternity on putative fathers. This applies, did I say that right? Yeah, putative fathers. This applies when a child is born before marriage. After birth, you agree either to have your name on the birth certificate to support the child, or you will become or you welcome the child into your home and openly tell people the child is your own. Essentially, if you tell everyone that you are the father, then the courts will agree. Some states do allow you to contest or challenge this presumption as well. So I'm not going to read the rest of that, but here's the thing is, if you go off telling other people that you are that child's father, the courts later on, if you're in a marriage where you've decided that you're going to marry a single mommy, guess what? You're now the dad. So essentially, whoever that woman puts the name on that birth certificate, if it's afterwards, you're the father. And even if DNA comes in and refutes that later on, you could probably take it to court and try to fight that. But imagine the amount of money, and imagine finding the right lawyers, and imagine finding a receptive judge. Most guys don't even do that. They're just like, I'm screwed. I'm on the hook. There's a lot of guys who I was reading a story about a woman who had done exactly this. It was birth fraud, and she had an affair, convinced the beta buck's husband that the child was actually his, and then decided, or he found out that it wasn't his. And then once he had found that out, she decided to get and divorce him and get back with the biological father. And so they started a marriage, but he's still on the hook for the child support of a child who his wife is now with another guy, and whose son, or whatever, I don't know if it's a son or daughter, is not biologically his. He's basically was a man who happened to be married to a woman who got him to believe this. I'll dig up the link for this, but they did a document. There's a documentary on this. There's a video on YouTube about this guy, and it's like, this is the law. Well, how do we get there? How do we get to where we're at with paternity? And the reason why I say we're with paternity is because there's a war on paternity. There's been a war on paternity since really the sexual revolution, per se, because what we've done since the sexual revolution is we've tried to convince men that it doesn't matter who the father is. And every Father's Day, and the same thing will happen on Mother's Day and will happen on Father's Day this year. Watch for these stories. They'll say, well, biological dad is a bastard, but the guy who's the stepfather, he's the hero. Right? We give him hero status. He's not the stepdad. He's the man he's the dad who stepped up. That's the cutesy way of saying it. Okay, we can do that. We can make those guys heroes. Maybe in some cases they are. Maybe the guy was a bastard, but he's the bastard that the mother bred with. I mean, in the end, we can turn cuckoldry into whatever fanciful Disney-esque story we want to. And they say, well, that guy was a drug addict, or there's something wrong with him. I can't believe she would, oh, he was never there. He was an absentee father or whatever. You can make him the biggest the biological father, you can make him the biggest bastard in the world. And then you can make the beta male, when I say beta, he doesn't even necessarily have to be beta male, but he's the blue pill male for sure, who believes that he's a better man because he's the guy who stepped up. He's the guy who adopted these children. He's the guy who and I mean, adoption isn't he's dating a single mother and really has no choice but to adopt these kids. He's a better guy. He's the guy who does the homework and assumes all of the parental investment responsibilities of that bastard that she had sex with and had maybe at least one, maybe two children with, because she thought that was going to be a good idea for her, in her journey of self-discovery before she hit her epiphany phase, right? So we can do that. We can turn these guys into heroes all day long. At the end of the day, though, hypergamy doesn't care. It's pragmatic. You believe whatever you want to believe, but her innate mating strategy has been satisfied. It's been optimized. It's been consolidated for sure. She bred with the hottest guy, and she's got you as the good provider, and you can feel good about that. And the reason that we encourage those guys, the blue, again, I'm not saying you're beta, but I will say that you are blue pill if you think that this was a good deal, because you're ignoring specifically and sometimes willfully ignoring the fact that she has just consolidated on her mating strategy, which really ends up becoming her life strategy, because you were there to absolve her of the responsibilities and the liabilities that came from breeding with that asshole alpha. So at the end of all of this, whether you adopted, whether you got cheated on, whether you decided to do this you volunteered for this, doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is that she's optimized her mating strategy. And guess what? You probably didn't, unless you had a baby with her, unless that was the deal. Well, you take care of this guy's children and you help me out. I need a man with some benefits. You help him out. You help me out. Maybe I'll give you a child. If that even happens. And in some cases it doesn't. I'm not saying it, well, guys see this right now as a good deal. Well, I'll be the guy that steps up. I'll be the hero. I'll be the guy who comes in and saves the day. I'll be the white knight. I'll come in and save the day. And yeah, no problem. I'll work the extra hours to provide for you and a child that's not mine at the expense of my own reproductive efforts. And that is what the story of paternity. That's why paternity is such an important thing. Let me move down here in my list of things. Guys, I am seeing your super chats. Just trust me if I haven't picked up on them just yet. Sam has been kind enough to archive them. There we go. Let's see. Red Steel, I already talked about ears. Mysterium Lugosi, thanks for that $9.99. And James Bartlett says, can't stay long, just came to say hi. Well, thanks, James. Glad you can come along. But come back and watch this, man. You'll really like this. I think this is a pretty important episode. I get a lot of guys who will say, well, I adopted, and I did it because, or what about guys? There's always the what abouts, right? What's the most common way that guys get into a child support situation with women and kids that aren't their own? How does that happen most often? It's not most often that they're adopting. Adoption is a process. You have to go through a lot. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to get to be in a, like if a guy told me and said, I know that I'm infertile and I want to have a kid. I'm going to adopt. I'm going to adopt on my own. How common is that in comparison to a couple who the couple can't have kids? Like the wife can't have. Maybe the guy can, but the wife can't. And the guy says, oh, you know what? That's cool. No worries. She can't have children because of biology reasons. We're going to adopt, or we want to be foster parents, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You can have, you can adopt guy, but at least in this situation, you're doing it voluntarily. You know what you're doing when you're going in. When you're cuckolded, you don't have any say in that arrangement that you come into, is what I'm saying. So guys will always ask me, they'll say, well, why don't you go on Joe Rogan? Why don't you go on Joe Rogan? This conversation I'm having right now is exactly why I'll never make it on Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan married a single mother and adopted her children. So if I go on Joe Rogan and I say, well, Joe, you're basically a cuck. I mean, by anyone's, definitive definition, you are assuming the parental investment responsibilities of another man's child. So sorry, but you're technically a cuckold. Maybe you feel noble about it. Maybe you're a noble cuckold, but your blue pill conditioning led you to believe that that was a good idea, that you should be okay with that. And there's been since the sexual revolution, we have systematically de-emphasized men's genetic interests, men's own interest in their own paternity since the late 60s, early 70s, because we've pretty much given the reproductive process over to women at this stage. I mean, right now it's evident. Back then, we didn't realize we were doing it. By giving them hormonal birth controls and saying, okay, ladies, it's no longer about biology and evolution and all this other stuff. It's about what's inside. It's about how you feel about this person. And no, it's bullshit. We've just basically handed over human reproductive, concerns to women. And again, people always say this is that, it's pretty much eugenics or dysgenics, however you want to talk about it. But that's what abortion is. Abortion is aborting the guy. Like, here's the thing is, when we have those kinds of rules, when we have that kind of law that says it doesn't matter who the name of the guy is on the birth certificate, he's the one who's going to be footing the bill. It will make you wonder, like, why wouldn't women want to have babies? Because it's a meal ticket. It's an insurance it's practically a cottage industry, right? You go and you have sex with the guy who's hot and fun and everything. You have the baby, and then you complain online for the next 10 years that you can't find a good guy until you get to be about your epiphany phase, or the guy gets to be 30, and that becomes sort of a default, like a de facto mating strategy for beta males, for blue pill beta males. By and large, I'm not saying it can be alpha and also blue pill. You can, but you are ignoring the reality of the situation is. And here's the way I define it. I define cuckoldry as this: it is one man who is assuming through either deception or by his own volition, he's assuming the parental investment responsibilities of another man's progeny, another man's child. Or children in that, he may be even more, right? He's accepting those responsibilities that he didn't have any input in happening. Sometimes that happens through deception. That's why I say it's a proactive cuckoldry. Sometimes it happens after the fact. It's retroactive cuckoldry. But in either case, whether you signed up for it or you didn't sign up for it, whether it was withheld from you or it wasn't, it's still cuckoldry. So when I see these stats saying, well, the actual number of DNA mismatches, or the actual percentages or statistics for cuckoldry is really, really rare. And we try, like, of course, it's in women's, because we live in a gynocentric society. It's in women's best interest to tamp those numbers down, to say, well, you know what, it's only 3%, or it's 2 in 10, or maybe it's even like maybe it's I've seen numbers anywhere from 3% to 25%, depending on how you do it. Now, I would say it is way, way higher than that if you include the fact that women have sex out of wedlock. What is it? 42% of babies born in the United States are born out of wedlock right now. That is cuckoldry. Unless they get back together with the guy that they had them with, if that woman has those children, or she has them by choice, like she goes to the sperm bank or freezes her eggs or whatever, if she goes and does that and you step in, guess what? You're now a cuckold. You've just signed up for your own cuckoldry, because you are now assuming from an evolutionary perspective, from a scientific perspective, you are a cuckold. And like I said, we teach men not to think in those terms. We make them heroes. Why do we make them heroes? Why don't we go, oh gosh, it used to be, there was a stigma against that. To be a bastard, right? To be a fatherless child was a scandal. Right up till the sexual revolution, it was a scandal to be born out of wedlock. But now it's getting to the point where it'll probably be the majority of births pretty soon. I mean, we're inching up. It's 42 or 43% right now. But we'll get up to 50, I guarantee you. Excuse me, because the more independent we make women, the more we cut them away from men's provisioning, the more common this is going to be. So, like I was saying before in some of my other posts, there actually some one of the related. Just so you guys know, whenever I do any of these shows, whether it's with anybody or whoever, I usually put at least one, possibly 4 links to essays that are relevant links to what I'm talking about. You'll find those relevant links in the description, and particularly in this one right now. So I want to let me press on a little bit here. Let's cruise down. Ed Exley says it's 1 out of 3. Well, guess what? It's probably higher than that, Ed, if you include the idea that, cuckoldry is socially acceptable. And so I want to talk about some other things here, but before I launch into the other side of all of this, I want to read you, and I have this one already queued up, so I'm going to bring it up here right now. This was something, I believe it was this out of Reddit? I think this was out of Reddit. So I'm gonna read this to you. I got this guy. It says, I am 58 years old, male. Feel like I never really knew my wife, 57. After seeing the way she handled finding out about our daughters, 25-year-old female. So got a guy, he's pushing 60, got a 25-year-old daughter. It says, I'm aware the title is confusing and unclear, but the situation is complicated. I'm overwhelmed and confused, and I feel like everything I knew about people closest to me was a lie. That's called awakened while married, by the way. Long story short, my daughter, Anna, 25 years old, female, cheated on her boyfriend, Adam, 27 years old, male, who I have an amazing relationship with and is now pregnant. The child is not his. The other man doesn't know yet, the guy who's actually the biological father. Adam was on a business trip that lasted about 3 weeks. After he came back, I assume Anna told him about the pregnancy because he called and said he wanted to propose and if I had any tips for him. 3 days later, he comes to drop a crying, wailing Anna off at our house with all of her belongings. Apparently, Anna's friend told him about the cheating. This is the only thing she told us through the crying. Adam didn't say anything. He just took her stuff out of the car and drove off. Bravo, Adam. I was and still am deeply disgusted with my daughter. I did my best to raise her well, and I can't believe she would do this. I am not able to offer her any comfort or support because I just can't justify her actions. She is my daughter and I love her, but I feel such deep disgust. What she did is despicable. I texted Adam asking him if he was okay. He said he'll be fine. Okay, so that's part 1. Let me bring up part 2 here for you. That's the first part. Now, you guys have just heard part 1. Imagine what part 2 is going to tell you. Is this the same one? Oh, that's the same one. My bad. Hang on. Part 2 is it this one? I think that's the one. Yeah, okay, this is it. Okay, so this is the second part right here. As if these conflicting emotions regarding my daughter weren't enough, I have some about my wife and the way she is handling this. Remember, wife is 57 years old. My wife, Mary, as soon as she saw Anna crying, started to yell at Adam, asking what happened, cursing him after he ignored her. Her reaction just added to my shock. I brought Anna inside while she was yelling and cursing. We comforted her. gave her water and sugar. And when she told us what happened through tears, my wife was shushing her, telling her it was going to be okay. But then she started saying things like, "You'll find someone better. He wasn't man enough anyways," which disturbed me. She doesn't see anything wrong with what she said. I told her that our daughter did something terrible and nearly got away with doing that to someone, and that she shouldn't be validated. I'm not saying we should insult her, but we shouldn't validate her choices either. She disagrees and says she needs our support. I really don't know what to do. I'm disgusted by both of them. But at the same time, they're my wife and my daughter. This is the 4th day since it happened, and Anna is posting on her Facebook things like men are trash and bad mouthing her friend who told Adam. I don't really talk to her. Mary told me, don't you dare talk to her about Adam. I started spending more time out of the house. What do? I really need advice on how to handle this. The TLDR here is my daughter tried to trick her boyfriend into raising a child that is not his. I'm disturbed by my wife's reaction to it. So this is really, in a nutshell, what I talk about when it comes to paternity. So you've got this guy who's his father. And then let me clean up here a little bit, guys. Sorry, give me 1 second. So you've got this father who's got a daughter, 25 years old, who attempted to do just what we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes here, right? Breed with the guy who is the alpha male. We're presuming he's an alpha male. I'm using alpha and beta as placeholder terms. I'm not saying like who knows? She had sex with some guy and tried to pass off that baby as if it was Adam's. Okay, so here's Adam. Adam finds out somewhere along the line, her girl, is it Amy, Anna, whatever, the daughter, her best friend says something to Adam. He finds out and he's out of there and ruins the plan. Ruins the optimization of hypergamy by telling Adam. I don't know why. I don't know how it happened. I don't know the ins and outs. All I know is that her hypergamous strategy, her mating strategy failed. And now we have the wife, the mother, saying, aligning herself with the daughter. And of course, what everybody said, if you read the rest of the comments, and there's actually a lot more to this. That was the basic gist of the story, and that sort of refers to the paternity topic that we're talking about today. But excuse me. So if you read the rest of the follow-up responses in there, the women take the mother's side. Whenever there is again, this is a sisterhood uber alles, of course, but the priority here, the women rarely see what is wrong with optimizing hypergamy as the daughter attempted to do. Adam, of course, at least has some balls and says, you know what, fuck it, I'm out. I don't want to have to deal with this. This is nonsense. I was going to ask you to marry me. Now I'm not. And basically dodged a bullet thanks to, Anna's friend. So that's the thing, is that could have been an incident of proactive cuckoldry right there. But why is it that women line up, and feminized men, I should say, also line up and say, well, he should have stuck around. I have read on Reddit, I have read on forums, I have read on Twitter, whenever there is a situation like this where the woman has attempted to do this, women take the side of the woman who is trying to pass off the child and say, well, if he really cared about you, it wouldn't matter who the child's father really is. How did we get to this point? How did we get to this right now? How did we get to the point where we go, you know what? It doesn't matter who the kid's father is. And that right there is, if you look at every one of these responses, there are very few guys who are like, there's a few guys who are like, fuck it, he did the right thing, he should have got out of there, he did exactly what he should have done. But there are guys, there are damn near every woman, not saying all of them, there are some that disagreed. Obviously, the girl that ratted her out cared more about Adam than she did about her quote unquote best friend, right? because it's messed up, because it screws up a family situation, a future family. What happens later? What happens when Adam invests himself in the development of that child? What happens when he believes that that child is his and he loves that child? And that's the thing. Guys will do that. That's why this is so fucking insidious right now. To say it doesn't matter who the father is. It doesn't matter because you're a man, you are a father, and fathers are superfluous. It just matters who the swinging dick is in the household and who's paying the bills. Dalrock has talked about it as this, and this is in my my fourth and upcoming book. And when I cover the marriage side of things in book 4, when we talk about religion and marriage and stuff, Dalrock said this, and very astutely, thank you, Dalrock. He said that we have shifted, and this is since the sexual revolution, we have shifted from a marriage-based model of child rearing to a child support-based model of child rearing. And what he meant by that is, like, right up until the sexual revolution, there were stigmas against this kind of stuff. This is why the dad is like losing his shit right now, because my daughter, I thought I raised you better than that. No, because you weren't the only one raising her. The village was raising her. And guess what? The village, including your wife, is getting behind her right now and saying that Adam's the dick and Adam's the problem and Adam shouldn't have done what he did. It shouldn't matter who the father is. He should be a man enough to like, no, what you are saying to me is that your mating strategy at the expense of the man's mating strategy should take precedence. That's where we're at right now. That's why there is a war on paternity. So it shouldn't matter. So what we've done really since like I said, the sexual revolution is we've put the future of the human reproductive process in control, unilaterally in control of women. In fact, women will fight tooth and nail so that they can keep abortion safe and legal. Why? Because they need that as a fail-safe for this kind of stuff. Exactly this kind of stuff. Oh, I had sex and I got knocked up by a blue pill guy. No problem. I'll flush it. I'll get rid of it. Oh, the guy's high value. I want to have his babies. And I got a guy who's going to be able to, sooner or later, somebody will come along because, men will, no, I just got to pray to God and hope that the right guy comes along and he accepts me and my baby. Be man. And in fact, that's another thing is you'll get single mothers that I'm not, if you're a single mom, hey, you made your bed. Okay. This is where you're at. And the reason why you're in the position and the conditions that you're in, the reason why guys innately don't want to have anything to do with you. It's not me or Rich or anybody else who are saying, you know what, women with, single mommies are red flags. Watch out for this. It's not us that it is making that a stigma. Men naturally see that, and they naturally see a woman with a child and they avoid them. It wasn't because Rollo Tomassi said, don't date single mothers. It's because most men, we have a hindbrain subroutine running that says, I don't know if I want to get involved in that. That's why the exception is the exception proves the rule, right? Most guys don't want to get involved with that. Why is that? Why don't they innately want, why is it instinctual for guys to not want to get with that woman? Because he's going to be sacrificing his reproductive efforts while he is taking care of another man's child. That's why you kind of, it's what I call there's a lot of this in a lot of study on this in evolutionary psychology, but it's about the human revulsion response. So when we see a dead carcass or we smell something really bad, or we smell like shit, right? We smell feces, we want to get away from it. Or if we see a dying, rotten body, we want to get away from it. And there's certain things, certain stimuli, I'm going to be behaviorist Rollo right now. When we see certain stimuli that comes to us, we instinctually, because we evolved this way, because we want to stay away from pestilence, right? We want to stay away from death, because if we go over there, we might catch something, we might die. We instinctually want to stay away from snakes or spiders. Women are afraid of spiders, or bugs. Why? Because it used to be you could get stung by one and die, or you could get bit by a snake and you could die. So we have this instinctual sort of species-specific fears and revulsions to certain things. Now, that it's real easy for me to say, oh, well, you don't want to get shit on you. You don't want to be around dead bodies or anything because you might get pest. Those are easy. Those are extreme examples, illustrations of revulsion. But another revulsion is when guys see a really super fat woman. They don't want to have sex with her. Don't me. Oh, it's body positivity. Why is that? Why are we trying to get guys to think that beauty and sexual arousal, and that for them anyways, not for women, but only for men, should be socially conditioned? It should be a learned behavior. It's not. It's instinctual, and we don't want to get with somebody who's not a good reproductive mate. Now, of course, men are scattershot. We'll usually go slump busting, or we will, no one's ugly after 2 a.m. Men don't have the same mating strategy as women. So sometimes if we're drunk, you might go and hit the fatty, right? But sober and with multiple options that aren't fat, you're gonna let's just be friends. That's where you're gonna go with that. That's a form of revulsion. Another form of revulsion is not to commit yourself anyways, or get into a long-term thing with a woman who has a child already. Because instinctually in the back of our head, we're revolted. I'm not saying, oh, we're revolted. I'm just saying we have hesitations. It's not quite so much revulsion, but it's an innate instinct level hesitation to get involved with a single mommy, because instinctually we know that our reproductive efforts will be better applied to a woman who doesn't have a kid, right? It's again, pragmatism. Hypergamy is pragmatic. Men's mating strategy is also pragmatic, but we're taught that that's bad, that it's bad for us to think those things. In fact, you'll be a hero if you go against your instinct. If you go against the instinct that says don't get with the single mommy, you'll be rewarded for it. People will call you a hero. You'll be the dad who stepped up. So what we're doing right now, since the sexual evolution, is it's really a form of social engineering to get men past that revulsion. And we do this in a lot of different areas. I'm talking about paternity. There's other ways that we do this as well. And you probably understand what I'm talking about. So maybe we'll talk about it. That's through, what I'm talking about. But that's beyond the scope of what I'm talking about right now. But that's also revulsion. The same thing as revulsion for applying yourself and basically putting yourself at a disadvantage reproductively by assuming the responsibilities and the liabilities and everything, and absolving that woman of her liabilities because she couldn't consolidate with the guy that she actually reproduced with. That's why the father in this story has I don't know, he even says, I am disgusted by my daughter's actions. Why would it be disgust? Why would he define it as disgust? Because it's revulsion. Because it's a guy, or it's a guy who almost got tricked. And of course, what does everybody else say? And all the people I've passed this story on to, I retweeted this out to. It's also in my Twitter feed if you want to see it. But everybody that I passed this on to, what do you think the first thing is that they said? The first thing they said is that the father should go get himself and his daughter tested, because they thought that the only reason that the wife would take the side or would in any way sympathize with the daughter is because she did it herself. And now here he is, almost 60 years old, and there's possibility. Imagine being like 58 years old. You have a 25-year-old daughter. He might have more kids too. I don't know. But let's just say, for sake of argument, he's only got this one kid. Imagine you're 58 years old. You've gone through, puberty, you've gone through the tweens, you've gone through, preschool and all this stuff, and you've invested yourself into this girl, and you've paid for her college, and I know my daughter's my own. Okay. So let's just, you probably know how I figured that out, but, I know that my daughter's my own, but imagine, let's just say for sake of argument, that here I am 51 years old, I'll be 52 in April. And now suddenly I find out that my daughter is not mine. After all of that, you can't put a price on all of that. You can't put a price on the fact that by doing that, by investing yourself in that, because what happens is, for men's mating strategy, you have to understand the differences between men and women's mating strategy. Women is about quality, men is about quantity. Men's innate mating strategy is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Get that through your head. All right. Can most men realize that? No, maybe 20 to 15% of guys, and some guys will fight me on that and say it's 10% of guys, can really realize that innate mating strategy in the real world. Most guys who are, blue pill beta male guys, that's still their innate mating strategy. They just satisfy it with pornography, unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. That's why it's so endemic right now. But that's where men are at when it comes to their own reproductive side. That's what we evolved for. That's why we get a hard on at a moment's notice when we're teenagers, because our sexuality is always on. We have to be in control of it. We're socialized to keep it in control. Potentially with every ejaculation, we can potentially impregnate thousands of women. If that were in some way feasible or possible, we could. But so if that's the case, if that's the reality of our biology, if that's our mechanics, then what is the strategy to use those mechanics? Well, in modern socially enforced monogamous society, we have to go and stick with one woman at a time. And think of this evolutionarily speaking, if that's my biological imperative, is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality, is to breed with as many women as I can. And for women, of course, on women's sides, the hypergamy, of course, alpha fucks, beta bucks, but that's about quality, and that's about getting the best that they can get. Like, is this guy the best? Hypergamy is based on doubt, and that doubt is he the best that I can do? That best is defined by two things. It's short-term breeding and long-term provisioning. So is he the best at both of those? Is this guy the best at one and this guy's the best at the other? Great, I'll solve that with this kind of mating strategy. But for men to consolidate and to fulfill, this is the cardinal rule of mating strategies. For a man, or for one sex, this is a cardinal rule of mating strategies. If you haven't read this, it's in book 3, is for one sex's mating strategy to be fulfilled, to be successful, the other sex's mating strategy has to either be compromised or abandoned. And really, since the sexual revolution, the answer to that has been men must abandon their sexual strategy. It's not a compromise. It's not a trade-off anymore, because women don't need beta males anymore. By and large, they don't need beta males anymore. That's why they're constantly looking for the alpha guys, and that's where we got into the debate on Rich Cooper's show with Dr. Sean Smith when we're talking about hypergamy. And so, if that's the truth, if we've got the cardinal rule of sexual strategies, mating strategies, one sex's strategy has to give way, has to cede way to the other one. So if a man says, okay, tell you what, I'm going to settle down with you. Yes, I am familiar with microchimerism. Yes, I got that. Thank you very much. I've sort of been reading about that. The jury's still out on that right now. So, but I have seen that. Yes. So you've got a woman whose her mating strategy is based on quality. The guy says, okay, tell you what, you want me to stick around? You want me to be a good father? You want me to do all these things? You want to do something for the long term? That's great. You're hot. I like having sex with you. I want to have babies with you. Tell you what, here's the deal. I'm going to be monogamous with you. I'm going to forsake all others. We're going to have this thing. It's called marriage. And I'm going to promise you that I won't have sex with anybody else. And I will provide for you. I will protect that child. I will feed you. I will do everything in my humanly possible for me to put as much of myself into you and that one child, or the children that we produce, and at the expense of me going out and nailing other women. Because I could, this is, male deductive evolutionary thinking, that man, his best reproductive interest is to hit as many women as he possibly can. It's not to settle down. If he wants to reproduce, he needs to hit as many women as he can, ejaculate and evacuate. That's why we can be ready at a moment's notice, get after it with the girl, get out, get in, get out. But say, hey, what? You're special. I'm going to stick it out with you. I'm going to help you raise this child. I'm going to give up. I'm going to abandon or compromise. I'm going to abandon my sexual strategy to help you fulfill yours, Mrs. Tomassi. I'm going to help you do all that. Okay. There's only one stipulation. Only one single stipulation. What do you think that is? The baby has to be my fucking kid. That has to be my child. And that is so imperative remember when I talk about, like, guys will fight me on this as well. I'll say, like, if I say men need sex, it is a biological need for men to have sex. But people, you don't need sex, man. What are are you a dirty coomer? That's what they'll say. They'll say, you don't really need sex because, you need to eat, breathe, and have water, and that's on sleep. All right. And that's all you need. No, to have a successful life, you have to reproduce. That's pretty much true of any organism, because if you didn't, you're a dead end, and your genetics don't go on, and that's the end of you. That's the end of your story. So yes, you do need sex if you want to in any way pass on your genetics to the next generation. Well, human beings need to, we depend on each other, right? I mean, we have, like I've said before, men and women are complements to each other. We shouldn't be adversaries, but we're complements. So my strengths complement my wife's weaknesses, and vice versa. Okay. That one-on-one, that pairing of a man and a woman, where you've got the woman who is at a weak point. Women are the weaker sex because they are more vulnerable, particularly during gestation and during child rearing. How long does it take to raise a child? It takes to self-sufficiency, like 5-7 years, something like that, because we have big brains. It's a great post by Whisper, by the way, about big heads, I think is what it's called. But we have big heads. We have a high intelligence, but as a cost to that is that we have to raise children up so that they can be self-sufficient. For instance, like if you had a baby horse, like a pony, or foal. A foal comes out, and within an hour after it being born, it can run away, and it can more or less survive. It's going to be doing what it's going to be doing, running away or whatever, and it's self-sufficient. Great. It's not as intelligent as a human being. Some pretty smart horses, but that's the difference there, right? How long does it take for a human baby to become self-sufficient? Well, about 5 years, maybe 8 years. Somewhere around there. Now, of course, you can arguably say, well, it takes 18 years. That's why we need child support and all that. Fact of the matter is that's 5 or 6 years that woman needs to be involved in raising that child, and has to parentally invest in that child. For men don't have to do that. We can go and knock it out with whoever, and then come back to our main piece and take care of our kids. And powerful men have done this for ages, right? We have harems. Of soft harems. So we've been doing this for a very long time. But so how do women get the best of both worlds then? Because their reproductive cost is really is very sunk into one to maybe 3 children. I know that some people have 8, okay, but that woman is very invested in reproducing, and hopefully reproducing with that one guy, or her religion says, maybe you're Islamic and you're supposed to have 8 kids. Okay. But in either way, even if the guy, if you look at situations of polygamy, where it's one alpha male and he's got, like, say 3 wives, 4 wives, he's fulfilling his reproductive imperative by having sex with 4 women. And he's hopefully investing in all of them, and investing in the children as well. So that's the payoff. That's the exchange. But what today's gynocentric society says is, you must abandon it. You don't matter. You're superfluous. It doesn't matter who the father is. Men shouldn't worry about who's the genetic biological father. But every instinct that we have makes us jealous if we find out that the kid's not ours. That's why when we go on Maury Povich, the kid's not yours, the guy jumps for joy, but there's still a dude somewhere whose kid that actually is, that she tried to pass it off with another guy. That's why that's a betrayal. That's why that's why you get, literally, men will get an adrenaline rush from, thinking that the child's not his. That's why you get jealousy. And when I talk about how we need to be careful of things like today, like polyandry, or polyamory, that's a better way of saying it. When I talk about polyamory, why is that being popularized right now? Well, it's popular because it shouldn't matter who the father is. You got 10 dads, or you got what is it, that one, 4 dads, and of course what was it, that there was that one girl, or one fat girl, who was like a 4, and there was like, she had like 4 nerdy um you know guys that all live in the same house. Those guys have sexual access to her, but she's not reproducing with any of those guys. She's reproducing with the guy of those 4 who's the most alpha. That's not a coincidence, because that she's trying to optimize, even in a nerdy polyamorous, quote unquote polyamorous situation. The same rules apply. The same hypergamous rules apply. It's not just, oh, let's all just be like free loving bonobos in the jungle. That even bonobos, like, people always tell me like, oh, you need to go read Sex at Dawn. And I have read Sex at Dawn, but I've also read another book called The Naked Ape, or The Naked Bonobo. That's what it was. The Naked Bonobo, which sort of has it's an eye opener, to say the least. Bonobos are not the free loving hippie egalitarians that people want to make them out to be. They're actually they can be very brutal, they can be very violent, and they are just as hypergamous as any human or any other primate is as well. We don't want to we like to cling to this idea that there's some, like, we just got to be like the bonobos. No. We are, actually. What's funny, we are like the bonobos. We don't want them. We don't want to be, but we are like the bonobos, and which is, they are hypergamous, and they are sexually selective. And the female bonobos are actually much more sexually selective. It's not like they're just saying, hey, let's all just have one big gangbang. No, they don't do that. Oh, let's see. What do you got here, John? Thank you. He says, even at the most blue pill part of my life, and a decade before I found your book, I was instinctually revolted by the idea of raising another man's child. It's biological conditioning. Yes, it is. And you know what else, John? That's why you feel jealousy. When I locked horns with Dr. Jeff Miller, very famous for encouraging a poly lifestyle, and really wants to sort of bend what he knows about evolutionary psychology to sort of fit his desire to go and get with other women, get with many women. I'm fine. That's what he wants to do. I understand why you want to be poly. Totally, man. That's because it in some way satisfies men's need for unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Okay, but don't go and tell me that you have some sort of monogamous invested relationship with another woman. And so what does he say? He says and sorry, Jeff, if you're watching this, but I'm going to brutalize you here for just a second. He was notorious for saying that the key to having a good polyamorous relationship was to be able to eroticize the jealousy instinct, to find some way to turn that natural revulsion. And so the revulsion is allowing another man to fuck your wife and reproduce with her, or potentially reproduce with her. If guys find out that they are pair bonded with that woman, remember, the exchange, or the implied exchange, is this: you're going to be straight with me, and I'm going to be straight with you. Okay. I'm going to forsake all others. You're going to forsake all others, because I need to know one thing, that the child is going to be mine. So what happens is, when there's suspicion, when guys know when their wives or their girlfriends are cheating on them, that's why they get suspicious. That's why they ask me, why should I go look through her phone, Rollo? Should I look at her text messages? Should I think she's cheating. Why do we have a mate guarding instinct? We have a mate guarding instinct because we're invested in our own paternity. We want to know the damn kid is ours. That's why we mate guard. That's why we get suspicious when she says, I'm going to go on a GNO with my girls to Vegas this weekend. Is that okay? No, it's not fucking okay, because I'm jealous. Why am I jealous? Because I need to know the kid is my kid. That's why. That's why I'm jealous. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But we socialize men to think that they have a problem, that they're insecure in their masculinity. Well, why can't you go do that? Are you so insecure that she can't do something like that? Why? Or that's how I hear a lot of guys who are in the poly lifestyle who will say, I'm so secure in my masculinity that I'll let my wife go and bang other guys. I'll go and find them on Tinder for her because she needs that variety. No, you have just eroticized your jealousy instinct. That jealousy instinct is revulsion. It's the natural innate revulsion of I'm going to the kid might not be mine. If she has sex with other guys and then she comes back pregnant, do I know it's mine or this kid's? That's why you get upset. That's why you get pissed off, because it at some point in our evolutionary past, in our ancestral past, guys who got jealous outbred the guys that didn't get jealous. Guys who mate guarded outbred the guys who didn't mate guard. Or else, like, people will say, well, doesn't that make a guy, like, they'll say, well, Rollo, you said that was it mate guarding is a beta male proclivity, right? Well, beta males will. No, not necessarily. I think it just kind of depends. I think the reason I say that it's a beta male proclivity is because beta males need to mate guard more than alphas do, because alphas, unless they're really invested in certain women, they'll mate guard them, yes, but not all the other girls that they're banging. Like, what was it? Even Andrew Tate was saying, all these women that he's with are free to go anytime they want. So they stay loyal because they choose to stay loyal to him. They stay monogamous with him, although they polygamous, but monogamous with him because they choose to, because he's so high a value male that that's what they do. He doesn't need to mate guard them. His mate guarding is, yeah, go do what you want, but you're not coming back here. Those are my boundaries. My boundaries are this: is if you go and fuck another guy, you're out. You do not get my protection anymore, because the deal is off. Because the potential of me figuring out whether or not the kid is mine is off the table now. And so you can just go fuck yourself, or you can go, your shit will be out on the sidewalk when you come back from Vegas, and have a good life. That's not necessarily mate guarding. That's just like enforcing a boundary. And so mate guarding from an alpha male perspective is just be so high a value man that she doesn't want to go and do that. And guys will say, well, she could just go do that and convince you anyways. And yeah, that's true. It didn't used to be true, but I'm talking about things from our ancestral past right now. I'm not talking about how we fuck things up in 2020, which we have. So you've got mate guarding, you've got jealousy. All of these things are really insurance policies against their revulsion, but they're insurance policies against that woman reneging on her exchange. I have sex with you only, and you have my babies. That's the deal. If that's not the deal, then I need to have some sort of psychological schema in my brain that I've evolved over 10,000 years to say, hey, I'm either you're in or you're out, kind of thing. That's where the revulsion comes from. And so you get a guy like Jeff Miller, or Jack Murphy or whoever, and says, I think it's great, we should all have sex like bonobos. What they've done, how do they get to that? How does somebody get to the point where they think that it's a cool idea or it's a great idea to live in some sort of polyamorous situation? How do you deal with the jealousy? That's the first thing he says is, jealousy is the hardest thing to get over in those situations. Yeah, you're damn right, because you evolved over 100,000 years for that. That's why it comes out. And then he says, oh, well, it's because we're more intelligent and we've evolved above that. And it's not for everyone. No, not everyone can eroticize their jealousy instinct. Well, you have that for a reason. You have jealousy as a reason. Women have jealousy as well, too. So let's just, let's be a little fair here. I'm only talking from terms of paternity today. But so why do you want to do that? Well, because what happens is guys have to change. We have to adapt our mating strategy for our times and our environment, and what the realities are of our environment. That's why poly has become a new breeding strategy, or a new mating strategy for beta men right now. Because if it's no sex and no reproduction, or here's your sex doll, whatever, if it's no reproduction, or you can have a chance at reproducing, but you got to share this chick with 3 other guys, and you're a beta male, that might seem like a better option than going home and whacking off. And as we have a larger globalized sexual marketplace, these sexual strategies are going to be more and more common. That's why I keep saying that poly is going to be a much bigger deal than anybody can. The signs are there. So Let me see what else I have here. Guys, I will get to your questions today. What is this? Yolo says, hi, Rollo. If men are jealous because they want to be the father of the kids, for the kids, what's the evolutionary reason for women being jealous? Okay, because women get jealous because of resources. So if a woman says, okay, I'll have the baby for you, it's going to be yours, I want to have your baby. It's really kind of depends on genuine desire, I think. So if a woman has genuine desire for a guy, she doesn't want to just have kids, she wants to have his kids. So, and that's sort of a distinction I think a lot of people don't, or a lot of guys don't make, is genuine desire plays a huge part in paternity and jealousy on the part of women. So when a woman gets jealous, like men often can cheat and women will accept it, right? They don't, like what I've said before is women don't want a man to cheat, but they love a man who could cheat. They want a man like to be if you're going to be here's the definition of a high alpha or a high value man, is you need to be the guy that other men want to be and other women want to fuck. And when a woman gets into that situation, when she commits monogamously to that guy, it's usually because he's so high value that she wants to have all of his resources. She wants to have both the protection as well as the genetic possibility. So when women get jealous, it's the same, really kind of the same thing, because if that man has sex outside of the marriage or outside of that pairing, and he is the cause of another pregnancy, that means that he's got to split his resources between two women now. And so that's really where a lot of that jealousy comes from. Women are far more forgiving when it comes to sexual infidelity than men will be if they are in a monogamous relationship. And that's pretty much a very well researched fact, is that most women will take back a guy who's a cheating husband or a cheating boyfriend. Like I've said before, is this is actually, I shouldn't say this, is a POOC line, which is women would rather share a successful alpha than to be saddled with a faithful beta or faithful loser. And you're going to see that this is going to be the case more and more. Now, those women are still going to be jealous. We don't tell women don't get jealous. We tell men you shouldn't be jealous. We don't tell women they shouldn't be jealous. We hold men to a higher standard of fidelity than we do for women, because we believe that men are going to be more infidelitous, I guess, or we believe that men are more beholden to their little heads instead of their big heads. And and as long as we keep saying this, because from what I can tell with our new order data collection and our new order communication, we can find that women actually cheat, if not as much as men, just a little bit less. And if you read, where'd it go? This book, this great book here, which is called Promiscuity by Tim Burkhead, you will learn everything you ever want to know about promiscuity and infidelity and cuckoldry. Pretty much most of there are very few monogamous animals on planet Earth. Monogamy is actually the outlier amongst in the animal kingdom. And why is that, Bill? Because according to hypergamy is pragmatic. If hypergamy can get the best of both worlds, it's going to try to do those things, unless there are limitations and buffers and things in the way, or unless that woman decides that, or that female, I should say, that female of whatever species it is, decides that it wants to stay only committed to that one guy. That's the Andrew Tate is a great example of a lot of the stuff that's in promiscuity, right? You have a high value alpha that women are monogamous with because they choose to be. They want to stay there. It's usually a part of a woman or females choosing to stay in that situation. In other instances, it might be social stigmas. It might be that she's forced into those situations. That's really what rape is it's a man exercising his mating strategy over a woman. And women will say, well, that's bullshit. That's a man attacking and hurting and violating a woman. Yeah, I'm sure it is. But again, let's look at this from a very brutal, rational, objective perspective here. From an evolutionary standpoint, it is a man exercising his mating strategy, unlimited access with unlimited sexuality, over a woman being in control of her own mating strategy, which is what we do right now. We give it. I think really what we've seen since the sexual revolution is we've unfettered hypergamy, more or less. There's no consequences for women. In fact, we've tried to find ways, like socially and legally, to facilitate hypergamy even more than at any other time in history. You want to know why I feel we're on sort of the cusp of a new way of, a new knowledge or a new way of relating, intersexually right now. It's because of what happened during the sexual revolution. I would say that the hormonal birth control and the sexual revolution that came right after it, obviously, not so coincidentally, I would say that the sexual revolution was a more radical shift in humanity than the development of the atom bomb. And you can quote me on that. I think that from a societal shift, from the great changes that have happened in humankind, that is up there with the best of them, with the biggest, if not the biggest, because it has changed so much as a result of that. How we relate with people, how we reproduce, how we relate. What's the other one right here? Vinny says, one guy having multiple girlfriends, like what Tate does, isn't polygamy too? Why don't we promote that? I promote spinning plates. I don't promote the same kind of quote unquote poly that, like, say, somebody like Jack Murphy or Jeff Miller would promote, because what that is it's sort of monogamy with a side of polygamy. Or, like, think about it this way. There's three ways to really think about this. There's the guy like Andrew Tate, who's a high value alpha male, and he's got a soft harem of 4 or 5 girls who are loyal to him, who fuck him, who are happy to share him. Like Pook said, women will share a successful alpha before they will be saddled, or they would rather than be saddled with a faithful beta. That's one model of polygamy, polyamory, I should say. Then there is the model, which is that one fat nerdy 4, HB4, and she's got 4 guys who are living in the same house as her, and they all consider themselves either the boyfriend or paramours or whatever. There's always, of course, the one alpha guy, but the primary in that situation is the female, because all of the guys that are sort of her orbiters, they're kind of like beta orbiters, but they actually have sex with her occasionally. But the baby that she was impregnated by that most alpha of all 4 of those. So even in that situation, hypergamy is still there, guys. You don't get to escape any of this shit. So there's that. Then there is the model, I think, which is sort of like the Jeff Miller, Diana Fleischman model, which is you've got a guy and a woman who are kind of like, they're monogamous, but they're monogamy, like they're the primary, like they're quote unquote married right now, but the arrangement of their marriage, or the terms of their marriage, is that either one of them can go fuck other people. And that's like, the state doesn't care how you arrange your marriage. Like, if you say those are the stipulations, I get to bang other people, and you, like, I could, like, for instance, it's not gay marriage, it's same-sex marriage. So technically 2 heterosexual men could marry each other, and the stipulations of their marriage is you get to go fuck women on the weekends, and I get to go fuck women on the weekends. We come back home, we live like a married couple, whatever, and we just hang out, and we're bros, but we don't fuck each other. We're not homosexuals, but we're in a same-sex marriage. See what I mean? That it redefines the terms of marriage. So there's the idea that you've got your primary and then you're fucking around outside of it. That's also, I would say, a beta male strategy as well, because it's allowing that. Because again, the only way that works is if you can sort of like learn to eroticize your jealousy, to get over that jealousy. Like if you go and you ask Andrew Tate, are you jealous of you jealously guard your women? He don't care. They'll go fuck whoever they want to, but they just can't come back home once they do. That's the whole thing. It's not so much about jealousy. Whereas like a guy like Jeff Miller has to tamp that down, or has to find a way to turn revulsion into something hot. To think, oh man, my wife is actually fucking someone else. Oh, that's why cuckold porn is such a big deal right now. You want to know, go look at the stats on Pornhub, or I think it's Pornhub. Go look at the blog. Don't go to Pornhub, but go to their blog and look at the stats there, and look at what the popular genres of pornography are. Cuckold porn is way up there. Why? Because it's taboo. It's something that is eroticizing a what would otherwise be a revulsion. Why is it that, like, and guys will say this, when women, or when men get addicted to pornography, it's like this incremental thing. Like they get hot for just like regular sex, then it's like lesbians, then it's like a threesome, then it's like BDSM, then it's like anal prolapse, or so it's like you escalate in what it is that gets you going, because what you're doing is you are conditioning yourself. This is the theory, that you're conditioning yourself to push past those revulsions, to push past the things that would otherwise be like, how do people get off on, like, other people peeing on each other, right? Because you have to get past that revulsion and eroticize your jealousy, eroticize your revolt. Like, oh, that's gross. How come people like scat porn? Some people do. That's a niche of porn. Gosh, you guys get the real education in this show, don't you? But why? How does anyone ever get off? I don't understand how people get off on foot fetishes. Like, what the hell is a foot all about? Who cares about feet? I want to see big boobs and a nice ass or something, right? But that's how do we get to fetishize certain things? Well, we have to push past those revulsions, or we have to have something that is engineering or conditioning us. Again, this is the behavioral psychologist in me coming out. We have to behaviorally find a way to push past those revulsions and turn those revulsions into something that is attractive and hot, and is converted into a reward, and stimulates our pleasure centers in our brain. So what we do by getting addicted to pornography, or getting or eroticizing our jealousy, is we are taking something that was evolutionarily useful to us, jealousy, and finding a way to push past it so that we can do something, exercise our will over it. Whether or not that's a good idea or not is still up for grabs, because you've been able to do that and convince yourself that another guy railing your wife is hot to you. That doesn't mean that the 25-year-old guy who just got married can do that too without wanting to kill his wife and kill the guy who's fucking her. Because usually that's what happens. Guys get upset and they beat the shit out of the wife, or they beat the shit out of the guy. And that's the way that they resolve that jealousy, is by finding a way to punish and that's the way we used to do it. That's what the Scarlet Letter was about, right? You have to wear the big A because you're an adulteress. You go and you look at, what is it? The Handmaid's Tales, or was it Handmaid's Tale? Yeah, you had to do that stuff because those were the social buffers of the time that would buffer against women trying to cuckold guys. That's what guys are like. The existential fear of men is to, I've talked about the existential fear of women before, which is to be tricked by a beta male to believe that he's an alpha male. She breeds with him, finds out that he's actually a beta male, and she never should have been with this guy, but now she's stuck. That's what women fear. Because back in our evolutionary past, women, if they bred with the wrong guy, that could be a death sentence. And so I think in our species memory, our evolved mental firmware was shaped by that fear. If I have sex with this guy, I could get pregnant. And if I get pregnant, that means that I'm going to get a big belly, and I'm going to have to take care of this kid, and I have to put all of this energy into it. So there had to be filters, there had to be hesitations, and there had to be ways to filter out whether this guy was giving, genuine signals, those kinds of things. That's women's existential fear, is to breed with a guy who is beta, who tricked into thinking is alpha, and having his kids and being stuck with the progeny of a man who was not her best, who was not the best she could do, right? So that's the existential fear for women. The existential fear for men, on the other hand, is to give up his mating strategy to help fulfill a woman's, and then have him be cuckolded. So he does all this stuff, makes all this sacrifice, compromises his mating strategy, or abandons his mating strategy. Most men will abandon their mating strategy today, but the payoff of the exchange should be that she's loyal, and she's going to actually bear you your genetic son. Before we had DNA tests, that was something that you had to take on faith. You had to take it on the woman's word. In fact, today you still kind of do right now. This guy who's in this example I just gave you, Adam, had to take it on faith. Well, guess what? The jig is up. The girlfriend said, hey, it's not your kid. And yeah, he's rightly pissed. That's what he did. He says, here's your shit. Put it on the sidewalk. Go back to mommy and daddy. Fuck you. I'm out. That's what he said. We think he's the asshole. We think he's the one, and that's why we're at where we are with engineering this society of men to believe that even if she has another guy's baby, that it's still his responsibility, because he's the one that's emotionally invested in her and has decided that she's going to be the one that he's going to spend the rest of his life with, right? So you will literally read women typing these words in, like, oh, he's an asshole, he should stay with you. A real man will stay with you no matter whose baby she's actually having, and think that that's right, and think that there's and if you contradict her, you're a misogynist, and there's something wrong with you in the way that you're thinking. No, what you're saying is that your mating strategy in excess, in its most extreme, should supersede any interest a man has when it comes to reproduction. And how did that happen? That happened right around the sexual revolution and right around the time that hormonal birth control came out, because now women have that complete control. And it wasn't enough just to be able to, abort a baby. It had to be child support as well. And we changed divorce laws. We have no fault divorce. We have the abortion laws that we have. And I mean, you think about all the social changes that came in the wake of the sexual revolution and hormonal birth control. And part of that is what we're experiencing right now in paternity, the war on paternity. So what we have to do to make sure that women have 100% almost tyrannical, unilateral control over the reproductive process, we have to convince every male that's ever born to sublimate their instinct for jealousy, sublimate and basically relinquish from very, very early. I mean, because maybe a boy is born to a different dad and their other dad is taking care of them. Now, I didn't get into it in this episode. I probably will at some other time, because I'm starting to get towards the end here. But then there's also the fact of infanticide and what happens when an alpha male comes in to breed with a new, well, really a troop, or a new harem. But like in this case, since we're all settled on social enforced monogamy, comes into taking care of that kid. He's never going to prioritize the other man's kid as if he was going to prioritize his own. You'll see a higher incidence. In some cases, I think it's 8 times as higher. You will see sexual abuse and physical abuse of the non-biological father, like the boyfriend that comes in, is banging mommy and beats the kid or abuses the daughters or whatever. You'll see that more commonly. Why? Well, because that's what primates do. That's what we do. Didn't say I was going to be pretty today. So let's see, what else do I got here? All right. Like I said, if you have any on-topic questions today, I'll be happy to answer them. Al says, these days, most men are already sharing a woman with several other men thanks to social media and dating apps. Yes, they are. And we are trying to normalize that. The reason we're normalizing it is because by and large, social engineering states that women need to be 100% in control of like their own security, their own reproductive process. We have gotten to the point right now where women can at will become pregnant and then, be taken care of indirectly or directly by men and resources by men. Whether that's a guy that comes in and marries the single mommy, or it's aid for dependent children. There also, and one last thing I did not hit on just yet, and I will right now, is the cult of the child. And the cult of the child is it's this idea that we do everything in the best interest of the child. And when I was reading you that family law quote earlier in the show, that's evidence. Those rules, though, that legal structure right there is evidence of the cult of the child. And I talk about I really need to, I don't have an essay about this, if you can believe that. The cult of the child is the idea that children need to come above and beyond every other consideration. So when, what is that guy? The guy Hogg, the guy who's that kid who was involved in the Nicholas Cruz shooting, David Hogg, I think it's David Hogg. He's very anti-gun, and what happened is, in the wake of all that, really it was the Women's March people who organized this, but then it was the March for Our Lives, and this was in 2018 because that's when this happened. And Pat and I really focused in on this when it happened. But what was happening there is, like, suddenly there's this gun control dialogue that was going on, and you had all these kids marching out in the streets for better gun control laws. And if you were against those gun control laws, then you were against the kids. And so you can't be against the kids. And so what happens is, and that's a good example of what I mean by the cult of the child, is that we use children as our ideological human shields. And that's what women do, because women are by and large more likely to get custody when it comes to a divorce or a separation or whatever. Women will, in almost, I think it's like 85% of the time. It's come down a little bit. It used to be a lot higher than that. But and the reason it has is because women are becoming, I think, less and less seen as the money, like who has the money problem in the relationship. Because a lot of people want to say, well, the divorce rules only follow the money. I think it's really more for the women, but do everything, whatever is in the best interest of the child. Usually what's in the best interest of the child is always in the best interest of the woman as well. So that's what I mean by the cult of the child whenever I use that terminology. And that is the result of a systemic engineering of this war on paternity. So men never get to men are superfluous, fathers are superfluous unless they need a scapegoat, unless the kid becomes a criminal. And of course, the single, this isn't a beat up on single mommies episode. This is I'm trying to focus in on the paternity issues, but you can't separate the two of them, because the idea that it shouldn't matter whether the kid is the man's or not is irrelevant, because we only care once the kid is going to be born, assuming the woman doesn't abort the child. But once the kid's going to be born, all bets are off the table. The man doesn't even get to know whether the kid is actually his or is not, because we want to do what's in the best interest of the child. If by telling that man, hey, dude, the kid's not yours. Hey, Adam, the kid's not actually yours. What's interesting, if you look in that story that I said about, was it Anna and the father who was having trouble with his daughter, her best friend actually did something that would be illegal for a doctor or a OBGYN to tell Adam. If she had confessed this, or they did a blood test and it's not the same, and there's a mismatch, 23andMe, whatever, if there's a mismatch, the medical professionals can be sued into the ground for doing something like that. But the best friend can tell. The best friend can be the third party knowledge. And why? Because they're worried that a guy like Adam's going to, abandon the girl, right? She banged. Well, go talk to the guy who actually knocked you up. Well, he was drunk. I was cute, he was cute. I was drunk, and one thing led to another. Please help me with this baby. Now she's a single mother all of a sudden, and now she expects Adam to be the guy, right? Well, what's he going to do? He's going to get pissed off. Well, that's what's in the best interest of the child, that he doesn't get pissed off, that he doesn't know. In fact, that's what they'll say is the reason why that guy can't know that the baby's not his is because it's in the best interest of the child that he doesn't know. And so what does that do is it prioritizes women's mating strategy over that guy. Your paternity doesn't matter. In fact, you're an asshole for ever prioritizing paternity. That's a natural instinct that's been evolved in you over 100,000 years. Maybe it's less. Sorry, don't get literal. Don't give me this. Oh, he said 100,000 years. We weren't around then. There, that was when the dinosaurs were out. Everybody likes my southern accent, so yeah, it's funny. Everybody was talking about my accents. Yeah, I'm glad you like them. Sorry, I've been a little more serious in this one today. MD, what did you say? Society today seems so female-centric that it's almost impossible to be an alpha. What is the solution for men? Be alpha. Like live unapologetically, like be your own mental point of origin, be Adam. Be Adam in this situation, right? Be the guy who is just like, I have to really, MD, I really have to buffer what I say these days a little bit more, because I think I've said this, and I was telling Suzanne Venker this as well, as like, I really firmly believe this, is that men and women are better together than we are apart. And the things that are fucking us up right now, the things that are fucking up gender relations, like this war on paternity, is by prioritizing one or the other. It's like like right now we have overly prioritized women's mating strategy. We've pretty much built an entire society and legal system, just the global society that we've been exporting, from the Western societies into others, with the rise of the internet and this new order, what I call the new order, has focused on one particular sex, and that's women. Everything. Well, I think there's this idea, and I'm going to get a little political on you right now. There's this idea that socialism this and socialism that. Socialism and collectivism are a female-centric way of thinking about government, thinking about society. Because really, government, what is it? It's managing people. Well, how are we going to manage them? Are we going to do it in a meritocracy, or are we going to do it in a collectivist, socialized, so I don't want to say socialism, but socialist way of, collectivist way of organizing things? Like, I constantly hear, well, actually, I should say the common refrain from like Obama and Buttigieg and Andrew Yang, who's now out, but all these guys want to say, well, men fucked everything up, and it would be great if we just had a woman in there and they could straighten us out and change things for us. And of course, this is just politics and propaganda. I get it. They're trying to get a vote or whatever. But the idea that would even be a popular message right now should tell you all you need to know about a gynocentric social order. Like, women fight me on this all the time. We don't live in a gynocentric social order. It's a patriarchy, man. Smash the patriarchy. But we don't. We live pretty much everything that we have structured for ourselves, all the way from our laws down to our presumptions about the opposite sex, all rotate around making the feminine imperative, really what's best for women, the priority. So yeah. So how do you fight against it? You make yourself your own priority, and you live according to, an ideal, I guess. If you want to get, I don't give you prescriptions, but if you want sort of a loose suggestion right now, I would say that we need to start changing our minds about ourselves. We need to see this stuff for what it is. I wrote an article about, it was called The New Enlightenment. And I've been talking about my kick lately for 2020 has been talking about the old order thinking versus new order thinking. And this is going to feature also in my fourth book. And what I'm seeing happen right now is we have more and more access to more and more information, and that information is coming back to us, and it's contradicting what our old order thinking, our old order presumptions has been telling us for a long time. Like, oh, well, women don't have sex as much as men, or women don't cheat as much as men. How could you possibly think of that? Well, now we've got these stats that pretty much show something different over here. How can you still think that way? Oh, what was the other one? Human beings, their gender and their sex differences, there's no such thing as that. It's all nurture and not nature. And yet I can show you studies and research and brain scans and everything that pretty much put the lie to the idea of the blank slate. There's a lot of work on this. Men tend to be more interested in things, women are interested in people. How did that happen? Well, well, here's freaking here. Look, try to get a screen. Here's the data. What do you do with that data? Well, it contradicts the way you've been thinking for the last 20 years, 30 years. How are you going to think about it in a new light? La la la. So here, what's the solution? God damn it. This is only £5. This is a £5 question. I'm giving you like $100 answer for. Okay. So here's the deal. We have to be aware. We have to be more like, if anything, my work has been about raising awareness. What do you do with that awareness? And how does it work for you? How are you going to live a better life by reading The Rational Male or being red pill aware? Hopefully pass it on to your kids. Hopefully pass it on to people if you can. Changing minds, starting from the bottom up, grassroots. But I don't. This is gonna sound strange. I seriously still think that men and women are better together than we are apart. I think that the only way that we're going to go forward is if we can find ways to accept that we are complements to one another and not adversaries of one another. Because right now, the way things are structured, we're always going to be adversaries, because particularly the feminine imperative, and particularly feminism in most part, teaches women that they are these independent, autonomous things that should be self-sufficient and self-fulfilling, and it should be the beginning and the end of all things, right? We just are. We don't need men. We like men. We just don't need them. And then MGTOW does this too, but like feminism also does this. Feminism teaches men, you should also be independent too. You shouldn't need women. You should just be your own person. The fact is we didn't evolve that way, man. We evolved to be complements. That's why do men have an innate proclivity to protect women? Because we evolved that way. Because women were weak. We had to be strong. We had to be the ones to fight off the fucking saber-toothed tiger. Well, we don't need to do that anymore. Oh, okay, fine. But, but we still are those animals on this. We're still the hunter-gatherers on the Serengeti. We just, how do we make that work? Well, we got to find a way to make our evolved proclivities work, or we're just going to have a society where boys are going to be on one side of the playground and girls are going to be on the other side of the playground, and we're never going to come together unless Sally wants to reproduce with a hot guy and then find somebody else to pay for it, right? So, anyways, sorry, guys. What is this? If capitalism is masculine and socialism is feminine and the two genders are complementary, then what should the ideal political system look like? That's a good question. I've written a couple of essays about this. One of them was called The Band of Brothers. So go look that one up. I've also got another one called Tribes, which is actually features in book 3. I don't think I put Band of Brothers in book 3. So well, I'll tell you this is we've gotten to this point right now, and this is one area where I will heartily agree with MGTOW, is that patriarchy was beneficial to certainly Western culture. Yeah, it's been responsible for a lot of atrocities too. Yeah, you're right. But it's also responsible for a lot of progress and putting men on the moon, right? So what's the deal? I think really there needs to be a balance between the two. I think if there's an ideal political system, it should look like a dominant masculine system with a buffering sublimated feminine side, right? So you've got the capitalist side, you've got the meritocracy, we want to be the best versions of ourselves. We need to work about our dominance hierarchy. Sorry, that's how capitalism works. Who does the best job? Who makes the most money? Capitalism is a much more masculine, much more male dominant hierarchy developed idea. Socialism is really rooted in females collectivism, or their natural proclivity to be collectivist. I'll talk about, you know what, Ashan, I'll talk about that in an upcoming show. What else do I got here? Okay, I'm going to answer a few of these real quick because I've already gone over, as I am wont to do. Okay, let's see. James Starr said, Rollo turned my dad onto the red pill through your content, and it's been great for their marriage. Thanks for all you do. Oh, good. See, that's how you live a better life right there. You go read my book. Let's see. Al gave me $2. He says, say no to single mothers in 2020. I think that's say no to be, like I was saying before, the reason why guys don't want to get with single mothers is because they see that situation as something that is inimical to their own mating strategy. They don't want, because if a guy takes care of another, if he parentally invests in a child that is not his, it pretty much stands to reason that unless he's a really high functioning, high producing guy and produces lots and lots of resources, he's probably going to be taking care of that guy's child at the expense of his own breeding imperative, his own mating imperatives. Al says, these days, most men are already sharing a woman with several. I already read that one. Okay. John Watts says, even at the most blue part of my life and a decade before I found your book, I was instinctually revolted by the idea of raising another man's child. It's biological conditioning. I think it's biological conditioning. I think it's an evolutionary instinct. Like I was saying before, guys who got jealous outbred and out reproduced guys who didn't. That's why we have it. Seems logical to me. I mean, you know, like guys, we should probably do an episode on EvoPsych at some point. I think a lot of people think that I'm overly dependent on EvoPsych. I use EvoPsych as a jumping off point for a lot of things that I talk about, but I don't use it as like, it's not like gospel to me. I know that like it can be, that's a great thing about science. We get more data, we can change our mind about it. It's not a belief set. It's actual, hey, I guess we were wrong about that. Okay, well, I guess we're going to change our mind and we're going to figure out something else, or we're going to have new hypotheses. That seems like a good idea to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot. Society today, excuse me, this is MD. So society today seems so female-centric that it's almost impossible to be an alpha. Okay, we talked about that one. Vinny said, one guy, okay, I talked about Vinny. Derps gave me $5. Thanks, Derp. Derp. Here's your $5 derp. Derp. Vinny, we are sharing woman by spinning plates too. Okay, so like I was saying before, spinning plates is different than poly. Okay. Poly presumes that you have a monogamous state, whereas when I talk about being not dating, non-exclusive, it's playing the field. Okay. It's not like you might have one girl that you come back to more, or maybe you have a fuck buddy or something like that. I get that. But you're not saying, hey, I'm with you exclusively, but I'm going to go bang other people. Or guess what? I'm with you exclusively and we're going to have a relationship together and I'm going to go find guys on Tinder for you to bang. That's what I'm talking about. There's a difference between those two things. It's guys being single, and dating non-exclusively is not the same as poly. We'll say, well, you're having sex with lots of different women. Yeah, but I'm not having relationships. It's not harem building. It's maybe that's your rotation. Maybe you have sex with 4 or 5 women. Or again, spinning plates is not always about sex. It's about having multiple prospects. So let's say you've got 7 girls and you're only banging 4 of them, and the other 3 you haven't banged yet. You're still spinning those plates because the possibility exists that you might want to have sex with them, or you might want to have a relationship with them. It's the point of spinning plates is gaining experience with women, so you know what you want and what you don't want. See? Okay, this was a really complex one. CJ says, does Freud's Oedipus complex affect a person's development in the SMV? Let me continue. Is this why females subconsciously go after men like their father, and why certain men like Prince Harry wants a mother for a girlfriend? I would say that there, say what you want to about Freud. I think it's time we move past. Guess what? I'm a big fan of Freud. I really am. I really think he had some really good contributions, but just like Carl Jung, I think we need to move past that. I think we need to look at, yeah, we can say, well, women will girls will fixate on their fathers and they'll date guys that are like, or that girl has daddy issues. That's really Freudian. Oedipal complex with Prince Harry and marrying this girl. No, okay, you could make an argument for that, but I think that really his mindset is really more because of blue pill conditioning and who his dad was. If anything, I would say Prince Harry's father had more influence over him becoming sort of like the cuck of Sussex, right? Remember when Prince Harry joked, he says, "Is the baby mine?" There's always a little kernel of truth in jokes, right? I don't know, man. I think that the jury's kind of out with respect to, is there even such a thing as an Oedipal complex? I think that if there is such a thing, it's because fathers and mothers model masculine ideals for their children. That's why I keep saying that you need to have a 2-parent heterosexual married couple, at least. You can argue about how a family should be structured, but how a man and a woman stay together, invest in the children that they have together because they want to, because it's built on genuine desire. I think a marriage built on genuine desire, one like for the man for the woman, a woman for the man, and the man understands his conventionally masculine role, women understand her conventionally feminine role, models those gender dynamics for those kids. You're going to have a much more well-rounded human being later on when it reaches adulthood than if you've got a lopsided one. Guys ask me this all the time. They'll say, "Rollo, I want to have kids, but I can't take that chance. I can't take the chance with having the girl, but I want my kid. So I'm going to find an artificial womb, or I'm going to get a surrogate mother, and I'm going to buy her egg, and I'm going to fertilize it, and she's going to carry it to term, and I'm going to get it, and I'm going to raise it as my own, or I'm going to adopt," right? Something like that. And they'll say, "What should I do? How should I raise it as a red pill kid?" And I go, find it a mother, because it's just as arrogant for you to think that you can model conventional femininity as it is for women who all do this, thinking that they can model conventional masculinity. And that's, again, why do they do that? Why do women think that they can be just as good a dad as any old man can be? Because feminism teaches them that they are autonomous. They are the best of both. They're the best that a man could be, and they're the best that a woman can be. And it's the height of gender hubris for a woman to think that she would be just as good at modeling conventional masculinity for a boy or a girl as she could modeling femininity. That right there, all that says to me is that person learned somewhere along the way from feminism or from the feminine imperative, whatever you want to call it, has learned that she's the beginning and the end of everything. When I talk about, and I will talk about this in my my 4th book on religion, the joke is this, like what would a religion by women for women look like? Well, we're already looking at it right now, because women worship themselves. They think they are the beginning and the end of everything, that they are self-sufficient, they're strong, independent women. Independent of what? Independent of men. So when Mother's Day rolls around, we have all these blue pill guys go, "I didn't need a father because you were the best father I ever had, Mom." No, that is gender hubris. Now imagine me saying, I'm gonna have my own kid by myself. I'm gonna, if I could do this, I'm going to reproduce outside the framework. I'm gonna have a kid. I'm going to get an artificial womb. I'm going to, have a surrogate mother, whatever, any of those questions. I'm going to have, imagine if a man could have the same access to reproduction as a woman does. Like a woman right now, if she can't find the right guy, gosh, lighting in here sucks. She can always go to a sperm bank. She can always go and freeze her eggs, if she hasn't found the right dude, and just hopefully wait for the right guy. He doesn't come around. She has this human right to reproduce. Imagine you give that to a guy. Women would lose their minds. Oh my gosh, how can you possibly model, femininity? Well, how can you possibly model masculinity? Because you need a man and a woman, because we're complements to each other. Anyways, let me keep going. Glenn Lawrence says, thoughts on correlation between the increased suicide rate between men and women due to being zeroed out and the effect it has on a young man, the sons of the deceased. Well, let's see. Getting zeroed out usually happens because the guy is two things. He could be financially zeroed out, or he could be just simply a blue pill guy who lost his one and be zeroed out. There's a guy like if you look at a guy like Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain got zeroed out, not because he didn't have a lot of money and lots of money, but he got zeroed out because he didn't see any point in living because every chick that he was with ended up cheating on him, or I would say that Anthony Bourdain, I don't know Anthony Bourdain, so take this with a grain of salt. But I would say that from what I've read of him and what his friends said about him and how he wore his heart on his sleeve and everything else, the guy was very, very blue pill and expected women to share his idealistic concept of love. And when they didn't, that destroyed his world, literally, or destroyed his world. So there's two ways to get zeroed out. Well, actually, you could have a combination of the two as well, I guess. So what does that do on the son? Well, that should be a warning to you. I don't know if that's what you're asking me right now is, what are the effects? Well, the effects are is that it should wake you the fuck up. I think really if there is, I don't know, man. It's hard to say because I also see my brother-in-law as one of these guys who got zeroed out and killed himself. And then I look at my nephew right now and they could care less. They really could. They don't commemorate his death. And the guy killed himself. So I'm just saying, the guy increase in suicide rate. Yeah. I think suicide is a coward's way out. Sorry to say that. It is. You need to fight. Even if you get zeroed out, you still need to come back and fight. The world's a better place with you than it isn't without you. You will never make people appreciate you or understand you if you kill yourself. And that's why when somebody's sick, somebody kills themselves, fewer people care. Nobody commemorates suicide. Nobody cares about those things. A guy dies, a tragic plane accident or something like that. Yeah, we might go and put flowers on your grave every time it was your birthday or every time it was your death day, whatever, but not suicide. So, Phil, was this you? This was you. Where's Phil? I think I had Phil here a second ago. Don't get away from me. There you are. Ha, caught up. Phil, $19. Thank you, brother. $20. The girl with $100,000 student debt in gender studies. MA thinks she's owed a 6'4" alpha Chad. Only the Chads aren't knocking. Why aren't women mourning en masse that the rest of lots of otherwise quality guys have now checked out? Well, okay, so this is the MGTOW, thing. Well, yeah, why aren't they pissed off at the situation, at the gender situation we got going right now? Yeah, it's funny about the $100,000 in student debt. You want to know why a lot of political candidates are talking about forgiving? The same ones who appeal to women are also the same ones appealing to the idea that we need to forgive student debt. Because women, by and large, are still locked in to the old order mindset. They still think that going to school, getting the student debt is the best way to future success. It is not. That's old order way of thinking. You need to find new order ways of making money. You need to find new order ways of arranging your life, new order ways of, understand. Like, I'm not saying that old order thinking, old order thinking is bad. I'm just saying that there's a lot more new information in the new order now that either confirms or denies it. So if you find the parts that are confirmed, great, cling to those. If you find the parts that are denied, fine, throw that away and start thinking in some new way of thinking. Women aren't going to do that because women are susceptible to they're very impressionable. Let's put it that way. That's why they have $100,000 student debts, because they believed at some point that to be a strong, independent woman means to go to school. Well, the joke was recently, it was a joke, but it seemed like a joke to me, was there was a tweet from this one lady who, I guess she was going to school, and she met some old boyfriend, and he said, "Hey, should I call you Miss or Mrs.?" And she says, "You should call me Doctor." Well, yeah, you're one of these people with probably more than $100,000 in student debt, and you're proud to be a doctor. Great, I'm happy for you. I would love for my daughter to be a doctor, right? But I also like for my daughter to have a good, healthy relationship with men and have a good understanding of conventional gender roles too. So, why aren't women mourning that? Because they are taught and conditioned every single day on social media and just on their online, or their online consciousnesses are steeped in the idea that they have nothing to mourn. Who cares? They believe that's still coming, and they have all the time in the world. And if they don't, they'll freeze their eggs and go and have children on their own later, because we basically given them free reign of the reproductive process. So there you go. All right. Let me keep going here. Josh, hey Josh. Freud, Jung, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Thanks. And Al says, being red pill means women not being able to take advantage of men. Watch how they change once they figure out they can't take advantage of you. I get that a lot of guys want to think that because they have some sort of magical armor that the red pill has given them, that women are going to in some way appreciate them more. They're not. They're not going to appreciate you anymore. You might be able to use it to your best advantage, but just because you're red pill doesn't mean women will go, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Red Pill. We'll all lie down and do everything you say." You can't think of it in those terms. So, being red pill doesn't mean women can take advantage. Well, put it this way. Being red pill doesn't mean that they should be able to take advantage. There's a lot of guys who claim to be red pill who are still trapped in their blue pill way of thinking about women. They'll come on my show, or they'll say they'll be the best MGTOW in the world, and then suddenly you find out that they're actually screwing around with 4 girls and simping to each one of them, right? So you can be red pill until you're blue in the face, but unless that changes your life, it doesn't make any difference. And women don't expect women to ever say, "Oh, you're red pill? Cool, let's get married." "Oh, you're red pill? Great. Jig is up. I guess you got me." They're not going to say that. And that is that. Okay, guys, I went over. I gave you such a fucking killer show today. I hope you appreciate this. You can show me your appreciation by going and subscribing to this channel right now. I'm pushing 34,000. I'm about 200 subscribers away from 34,000. I realize that what I do is very, very long. I do 2-hour shots with you, but I think you guys like it when I do live stuff like this. Maybe I should probably shorten it up, but I felt like I needed to go a little bit over today because we're talking about some deep stuff. I usually talk about deep stuff. So anyways, please subscribe to this channel. Also, Rule Zero on Saturday. Check that out, because we have the big announcement, which is going to be our Rule Zero Live, which is going to be an event. We won't tell you. I'm not going to tell you where it's at right now, but you'll probably figure it out. And also, if you want more information on Rule Zero Live, it is we're limited to 100 guys. If you want early access, you got to be a Patreon subscriber. It's only cost you $5 to be a Patreon subscriber. How cool is that? And, sooner or later, I'll get you an email. I'm actually developing an email list right now. I've got quite a few. So I've always kind of shied away against email lists because I don't like to see it. Like when I'm on a blog, I don't want to see the email thing pop up and it's like, "Oh, what is he begging me for now?" But I have one. I do have an email list. People actually sign up even though I don't ask them for it. They just do it on their own, which is cool. So I've got quite an extensive email list on the Rational Male. I just haven't really utilized it for anything because I don't want to bug you guys. I mean, buy my books. That's the extent of my bugging you. Okay. But I will bug you for this. If you want to come and hang out with us at a really cool venue, it'll be the middle of spring. So it's going to be the middle of April. And go check that out. Also subscribe to this channel, and then hit the alerts here as well. Also on Sunday, of course, is my regular show. And of course, Pat's not with me anymore, but I will have some guests on my Sunday same time as this. I hope you guys like this this format, and I hope you guys like the for me it's 1:30, but for you guys it's 4:30 Eastern. I hope you guys like that one a little bit better. Last one here. Sorry, Calvin. In order to get access to hotter chicks over time, should I spend my time cold approaching and improve my game, or should I spend time amassing wealth? Preferably both, but if you want to get access to hotter chicks, spend time cold approaching, because wealth is not as much of an attractant as you are probably led to believe. There you go. There's your $5 answer. So with that said, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks, Sam, again, for helping me out. Book 4 is on the way. Look for it soon. I'll let you know when the big announcement is. So keep that in mind. It probably won't be till the end of March, if I'm honest. But so keep that in mind. But you'll get come check out the event and check out Rule 0 on Saturday. Okay, guys. Bye-bye.